Rhetoric is a tool used to persuade. Politicians use it in their speeches all the time for this very reason. It makes sense that politicians use rhetoric, as they always want to persuade us of something, whether it's to rally the people around an idea or to get votes or even to avoid impeachment. There are hundreds of rhetorical devices to choose from, and they're not just for politicians and marketeers. They've been used by creatives to add power and beauty to writing for over 2,000 years, from script and playwriters to authors and poets and lyricists. In this video, I'm going to focus on a rhetorical device which we're all aware of, rhetorical questions, and I'm going to look at how and why they're used in songs. The expectation with rhetorical questions is there's no answer required. Is the Pope Catholic? Should I compare thee to a summer's day? You may be thinking, who cares? Which is a rhetorical question too. When a parent says to her kid, how many times do I need to tell you to take your muddy shoes off before you come in the house? She's trying to persuade him to think of what he's doing and the consequences using rhetoric. If he answers, I don't know, 1,000, then you can imagine what's going to happen next. It's a question not to be answered. Or is it? That's what we're about to find out. We're going to look at the song How Long Will I Love You, originally by the Waterboys and then covered by Ellie Goulding. The original is upbeat and conveys a wildly romantic notion, while Ellie Goulding's version is slow and stripped back and elegiac in its delivery. One other way to look at this is that the Waterboys version was a firm favourite of weddings in the 1990s, while Ellie Goulding's version is quickly becoming a feature of funerals and weddings, already hitting the top 20 funeral songs in recent years. And that's because it's mournful and haunting, yet because it uses the words of the original, exploring endless love, it's beautifully optimistic and romantic. And because of all of this version has the power to stop you in your tracks, to consider the big picture of love and existence. And this effect, this power within the song is generated using rhetoric. You may notice that the lyrics contain a number of questions, which are then immediately answered. The song's title is the first question and the first line of the song, and it's rhetorical. How long will I love you? So remember the kid who walked mud through the house? His story serves as a warning to us all. Don't answer rhetorical questions unless you've got a really good reason to, or a bloody good answer. The kid in the story didn't have either of these, but this song does, so it's okay and it works. How long will I love you? The answer, which is volleyed straight back from the same mouth, is as long as stars are above you. This technique of answering a rhetorical question is called Hypophora. It's a really interesting technique because done well, it's really bold, powerful and persuasive. So when the question, how long will I love you, is posed, as a listener, words might quickly fly into our heads as unrequested answers to the rhetorical question. Things like forever, until the end of time. They're all a little cliched and flat, like a cheap Valentine's Day card message, and that's not what we want for our lyric. But here the question is answered by the person posing it, without cliche or complexity. Forever is defined as long as stars are above you. Now for me, that's a great answer. And it's stronger coming from the person asking the question, as their answer is more important than the other person's perspective or perception of what they might be feeling. Powerful stuff, huh? The answer is even extended or amplified with the next line, and longer if I can, which, if you're interested in rhetoric, is hyperbole, another example of rhetoric, which is basically massively exaggerating a point. The next section and the next question is, how long will I need you? Again, rhetorical, and again, answers straight away with fresh, non-cliched, romantic poetry. As long as the seasons need to follow their plan. What a lovely answer and sentiment again. And also, a pattern is beginning to build here. The first question used space as the answer, as long as stars are above you. Now the lyric turns to time, as it's all about the seasons following their plan as directed by nature. All the things which are much bigger than us, which convey the infinite and make us feel so minuscule and insignificant, like space and time, are used here to measure against the love of one person for the other. Now, is that about as romantic as you can get with a song? The next question is, how long will I be with you? And it comes when the music changes into what feels like maybe a chorus is coming, but then it doesn't, which is really interesting too because it keeps you guessing. The answer that comes back is, as long as the sea is bound to wash up on the sand. So again, it's using the power of nature and time to compare with the power of their love. The song goes on and on asking and answering rhetorical questions with the musical patterns repeating, to convey and enhance the feeling of infinite and unending love, which the song is exploring. So that song uses the ask and answer method for using rhetorical questions, as I call it, which is one of 4 rhetorical question types. So let's look at them now in turn and how they're used in some other commercial songs. So we've looked at the ask and answer method. This is where you answer the rhetorical question as we did in How Long Will I Love You? But you've got to have a very good reason to answer a rhetorical question. Remember the kid who answers his mum's rhetorical question? He probably got grounded, and that's not what we want for your lyrics. So it can massively backfire, but the answer, if it's appropriate, original, so not cliche, and well worded, will make a really powerful lyric. It's a really good way of using rhetoric. The next type is ask and don't answer because it's too damned obvious. This is where you choose not to answer the question and just leave that rhetorical question floating. In Prince's song, The Most Beautiful Girl in the World, he doesn't directly answer the question at all. The fact he's using a rhetorical question is enough to show that he believes her to be exactly that. It's the equivalent of saying, is the Pope Catholic? She simply is the most beautiful girl in the world to him. This use of rhetoric means you're going on record as stating the answer to the question is totally obvious, and it works well in love songs for that very reason. Now the third type is called Are You Serious? Here you can use rhetorical questions to highlight your absolute incandescence and bewilderment about a subject. Like we see in the song, Is She Really Going Out With Him? That's the equivalent of someone saying, Are you serious? Her? Alarm bells go off in your head and a sensible voice says, Don't answer that. Let's face it, he knows the answer anyway, so don't anger it. And the final type is there is no answer, or at least no confidence in an answer. This is where you use rhetorical questions to show just how impossible some things are to answer. Bob Dylan uses this method brilliantly in Blowing in the Wind. In this song, he poses question after question about the state of the world and humanity and sums up that the answer is blowing in the wind. That is, it's elusive and we may never know. Eric Clapton does the same in the heart-wrenching song Tears in Heaven. Would you know my name if I saw you in heaven? Would it be the same if I saw you in heaven? So Clapton's using the device to show that he's adrift, with no answer, bereft and full of grief over the death of his son. He desperately wants to know if he'll see him again, but there is no way of knowing. So there are a few ways of using rhetorical questions. And as you can see, all the songs I've mentioned have different messages. There's endless love, telling someone how beautiful she is, raging about an ex, the state of the world and humanity, and grief. They all use rhetorical questions, and they all work for 2 very simple reasons. Firstly, all of these songs chose the rhetorical question type, which perfectly balanced the sentiment of their song. For instance, Prince didn't ask and answer the question because he wanted it to float so she could draw the obvious conclusion for herself, thus retaining some mystery. Could you be the most beautiful girl in the world? Yes. Or even worse, maybe. It's a closed question, and closed answers wouldn't be the right option here. So not answering works best here. And second, they all handle the question with great poetic care. For example, the Waterboys, the Ellie Goulding song if you like, didn't go all literal with their answers, flushing the romance down the toilet with it. How long will I love you? Until we're both dead. And they also didn't turn to cliche. How long will I love you? Until the end of days. Choose the right type of rhetorical question to fit your song and then craft it with poetic care and you'll have a powerful, persuasive lyric. And that's rhetorical questions. Or is it?